All right, welcome everybody to this live episode of Mike's Money Picks. I appreciate the patience out there for everybody waiting. Tonight, I had to put the 3-month-old down to bed, and you never know how long that's going to last. Sometimes he's on schedule. Sometimes, like tonight, he's just sitting there staring at me for about 15 minutes. So a little bit behind, but thank you guys for joining us. This is going to be like the final takes episode for week 0. Basically, if you guys caught my episode early in the week, we kind of went over an overview of all the teams playing, what we're expecting from all those teams. And now that we're here on Friday, the day before it all goes down, we've got depth charts, we've got a pricing update, we've got more information and more access to it. So this is going to be really where we get into the nitty gritty and break everything down. And to do so, I have brought a guest on here with me. You guys know that when I bring guests on here, it's people that know ball, and it's people that add to the show, and it's people that I trust. And so this guy is the guy that I've been talking to in the Discord for about probably a little over a year now. And he's a name that if you play enough college football and college basketball DFS, you will see his username at the top of leaderboards. He's a really sharp guy, and I'm really glad to have him on. His name is Zach Green, a.k.a. Okie Cowpoke, a.k.a. Big Country DFS. Zach, welcome to the show. Happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show. You know, always enjoy college football and watching it, and it's great to have another year. But funny, as you mentioned, we have depth charts, but except for Sam Houston, we don't know what's going on with that, and Western Kentucky with just the numerical roster.
Yeah, big point of contention on that because as we'll get into, I basically threw myself into all of the information I could find on those two schools in the last few days. There is a shocking amount of Sam Houston State content available on YouTube. Let's just say not exactly been the most enjoyable time listening to people talk about Sam Houston football because I don't think they're going to be very good. But anyway, like I said, we're going to break down the entire Saturday slate. So this is a different one. I know, you've kind of talked about this already. I really wish there would have been a 4-game slate instead of a 3-game slate because I really do feel like one of the most interesting games is the Showdown slate. Do you agree with me that it should have been 4 games?
Yeah, and whenever, we got where they took it off, they pulled the slate for a minute, so everybody thought, okay, they're going to add that Iowa State, Kansas State game, and then they didn't do it. Because that's honestly as far as watching, that's probably the best game tomorrow of the day, right there at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, it's certainly the one that has the most college football playoff implications. Like, it's certainly the one that's getting all the marketing, all the hype. So I don't know why they did it that way. DraftKings in their slate selection sometimes, I feel like if they were to hire me to do that job for them, I feel like I could do it. But, I'd rather play than set up the slate. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and dive into the Showdown slate. If you guys are watching us live, go ahead and hop in the chat. Let us know you guys have any questions, if you agree, disagree, if there's anybody you want us to talk about, anything you want us to talk about, because, we're here for you guys at the end of the day. I see a few people in the chat already. My guy Huncho, he is in the chat. Happy to have you here. And then Darren, a longtime member here, says, Bearcat fans are passionate. What do you expect their next door neighbors with the Aggies? Yeah, there's some people with some takes on Sam Houston football. And I was very surprised to find that out. But yeah, they're very passionate. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with the Showdown slate here, Zach. So the first thing we're going to talk about is captain selection, right? Because when you play Showdown DFS, if you want to win all of the money, you have got to have the right captain. And I'm going to start us off. I think the guy and honestly, I'm not the biggest Showdown guy. I wouldn't say that I'm a Showdown expert. I've been profitable in college football when I have played it and actually taken the time to think about it, but I very much prefer to play the bigger slates. So just, putting that out there before everybody jumps in the chat and says, I don't know what I'm doing with Showdown. I'm going to start off. My favorite captain for this week, and a guy that I'm probably going to have as the captain in most of my lineups, is Dylan Edwards. I just think he's a gross underprice. We know that Kansas State with Chris Klieman is going to want to run the football. And in his one game as a starter last year, Dylan Edwards put up 45 DraftKings points against Rutgers. That was not a bad Rutgers defense either. I do think this Iowa State defense playing that 3-3-5, I think they can be had via the run. So I really do think that Dylan Edwards is the guy that I really want to attack this slate with. What are you thinking, Zach?
Yeah, it's like you read my mind, I guess, because most people, they want to automatically start out with the quarterbacks, like
Correct.
Avery Johnson or Rocco Beck, but then that just constrains your lineup so much trying to do that. So if they aren't the highest scoring player, then you're not going to be anywhere near the top. And also with Edwards, Kansas State is always, looking to dump off passes to the running back
Yes.
backfield too. So you get that extra bonus there too.
Yeah, and you look at last year, like Dylan Edwards, even when he was the backup, he was used in a pass catching role. Like, if you're playing player props, I think the underdog is hanging like a 12.5 on his receiving yards line. I do have that as one of mine there on underdog. And another thing too with Kansas State is like, people are going to criticize and say, oh, Edwards is small. He's not built for the workhorse role that, DJ Giddens had last year. Well, flashback like 2 full years ago, and they had Deuce Vaughn, who's a very diminutive guy as well. So I'm not worried about like his size being a limiting factor. Could he get vultured on the goal line? Yeah, but like they've got Avery Johnson at quarterback. He could vulture anybody at the goal line. So I'm really not concerned a whole lot about Edwards, kind of getting vultured or getting outworked. The one thing I will add is I do think that a very affordable price tag for his backup, Joe Jackson, even in the bowl game last year against Rutgers when Edwards started, Jackson still got out there, had 7 carries, had 3 receptions. So I do think Jackson is a name to consider as well. And I don't think you have to be mutually exclusive with it. I really think this Kansas State team is going to have success on the ground. And I do think that that's going to be how I want to target Kansas State, is with the run game with the 2 running backs and the quarterback as opposed to the passing game.
Yeah, and that's definitely probably the safest plays for captain, or either Edwards or either one of the quarterbacks, because there's just so many question marks, especially on the Iowa State side, losing Higgins and Noel on who's going to be catching the ball. And so if you want safety, and that's what you want in the captain spot, it's going to be one of those 3 guys. And I also like what you mentioned with Jackson, because Kansas State, they will spell guys on. They won't, run them 25 times a game. So he's going to get some looks too.
Yeah, I mean, they just generally run the football enough that backup running back is going to get some action. And, if Jackson comes in and vultures a touchdown, or if he comes in and catches a few passes, that's instantly going to pay off, because, like, you look at the other guys priced down here, and it's guys that are, like, not even on the depth chart or at the very bottom of the depth chart. And you get a guy in Jackson that has a lot of touchdown equity. They're 1,800. So I really like that a lot. The other thing I will add, the other guy I'm considering for the captain role, and you can tell me if I'm off base here. I totally, you can tell me I'm crazy, but I'm really thinking long and hard about putting in the captain spot, not for anything necessarily that he showed me while he was at UCF, but DraftKings, it's PPR scoring. We know that Iowa State, they target that slot position heavily with volume like they did with Jalen Noel for the last few years. And so I really think that Townsend, if he comes in, takes over that role, has some chemistry with Rocco Beck, I think that the Kansas State defense is going to kind of let them have those short passes to Townsend. And I think that that's a way that you can really get a lot of points quickly, is by just getting those 1 point per reception. In terms of the Iowa State receivers, Zach, are you more on Townsend, or would you rather play another guy?
Well, yeah, I like Townsend from his time at UCF. The only thing that is throwing me off a little bit is, if you notice their depth chart, every single position on the receivers has the "or," which I hate.
Correct.
Because Townsend is actually listed as the number 2 behind Eli Green. With the "or," obviously, Townsend's probably more talented. Same thing with Chase Soul. He's listed as the X, but as the number 2. And so sometimes it's almost like these coaches are just trying to throw a smoke screen out there or something.
Yeah, the one thing I noticed with that, it was like only the transfers were not listed first. It's like Matt Campbell is like, we're going to reward the guys who have been loyal here. And I wish there... So there will never be regulations on it, but like I find the absurdity with what these coaches do in these depth charts to just be kind of hilarious, right? Like perfect example, when I was at Charlotte and I worked in film and we played Georgia State week 1, this was back in 2015. I had to have a scouting report on like every offensive player they had. right? Like no matter where they were in the depth chart, like I had to know about that player. And then when the depth chart comes out, it's like, okay, well, I've scouted all these guys anyway. And then the first game happens and it's not those guys. And it's like, well, we've still scouted all those guys anyway. So you're not gaining an advantage by like these weird depth charts. I just really wish coaches would get away from that.
Yeah. And then, Iowa State, well, both of these teams really use the tight end. So you could look at Brahmer or Burkle.
I like that shout. Yeah, the tight end position, very high likelihood to score a touchdown in this one between Burkle and Brahmer on the Iowa State side, and then you got Garrett Oakley on the Kansas State side. Garrett Oakley kind of transition here away from the captain spot more so into general lineup building. Oakley's kind of one of my favorite value plays here. He just finished the season strong, and we've seen Kansas State have solid production from the tight end position. If you remember back in 2023 with Ben Sinnott, like this is a team that will target the tight end. And so I think the Oakley's in a pretty good spot there and at a pretty affordable price tag.
Yeah. And one thing, if you're looking for value, it's not something I personally do. I don't know about you, but kickers. And the reason I don't really use them is because I feel like, well, unless we're getting 4 or 5 field goals, it's not really going to pay off.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. Like I generally don't do it a whole lot when I play Showdown. It's just kind of like I feel like if you were to play Showdown cash games and you need like a floor from every position, like the kicker probably has a higher floor because if they score 17 points total for the team, you're getting 2 extra points in a field goal. That's like what, probably 6 or 7 fantasy points. Like you have a floor there, but like I don't like playing cash games, so I want upside, and I just don't think the kickers have a whole lot of upside.
Yeah, I mean, you get the big play receiver, 1 play, 1 catch, but if it's 70 yards and a touchdown, they're right scoring the kickers.
Like just the thing about the guys we've already mentioned that are cheaper than the lot of kickers, right? Like Brahmer is there, Eli Green, who is a start on the depth chart, is there, Burkle, the tight end. We are Joe Jackson, the running back. Like there's just a ton of guys that you can get cheaper than that kicker that are going to have a ton of upside. All right, now let me get caught up on the chat here. It says Hunter, how are we feeling about Hansen? Feel like he's the guy to score TDs. So to me, and Zach, you can talk about your logic on this as well. If I'm playing enough lineups, I'm going to get some exposure to both Hansen and Abu Sama. Because they are going to split that backfield. I can't find Sama on the DraftKings slate here. There he is. Forgot he's the third. Yes, I'm going to play a little bit of Hansen. I'm going to play a little bit of Sama. Hansen is definitely the guy that gets the goal line work. Like he just has a ton of touchdown equity, 15 total touchdowns last year. Like that's a lot. But Sama is the guy that's much more likely to break off a long run, right? And we saw that at the end of his freshman year. He had a few huge games. Last year, he had a few games where just 1 run carried his stat line. So I'm definitely going to have exposure to both of them if I'm playing a lot of lineups. But personally, I would probably prefer, like if you're just playing single entry, if you're just playing a 3-max or something like that, I'm probably not getting to those Iowa State running backs. Just because it's for certainly like a 60-40 committee or 50-50 with completely different upsides.
Yeah. And I believe, let me make sure I'm not telling a lie here. Hansen's more expensive than Edwards. And
yes.
So it's definitely a great way to get different, but Hansen's going to have to probably have a 2-touchdown game, something like that. If you're wanting to use him in the captain flex, I could see using him there. But again, it's, even in GPPs, the quarterbacks are going to carry immense ownership. And so you're trying to fit in, you put Edwards in there and then you put both quarterbacks and then you're left with about 5,000 per spot for the last 3 spots. So then you throw in Hansen and then you're definitely using 2 of those punts down there.
Right.
Jackson or somebody.
And the thing, and I think you had a great call on Hansen where for him to go off, it would have to be multiple touchdowns, right? Like he's not going to get you like 100 yards or anything like that. Like his best games are going to be like 60 yards and 2 touchdowns, kind of like what he did in the bowl game against Miami, right? Like that's like a great example right there. So the one thing we have not talked about kind of is the Kansas State passing game. So what I find to be super interesting is the way they did the pricing. I really think Jace Brown is their wide receiver one, but he's priced like their wide receiver one, and it makes him really hard to get to. And I would kind of prefer, like much like if you're the Hansen and Sama logic that I just mentioned, I would kind of prefer if you're playing multiple lineups to get exposure to Bradley and get exposure to Tibbs, because they're going to start, they're going to be out there, they're going to have a chance to earn targets, and they're much, much cheaper than Brown. How are you seeing the Kansas State passing game?
Yeah, Brown is definitely their number one, but like you said, we're not getting any favors with the pricing like we did with Edwards.
Mm-mm.
And Bradley, he was great at Texas Tech, so he'll fit right in as a good number two there. And then Tibbs will be solid as well. And as we already mentioned, the tight ends, because especially in the side zone, if it's not Johnson, if it's not Edwards, it's most likely they're looking for the tight end in the red zone.
Yeah, and I really do feel like, all things considered, I think this is more target competition than what they had last year in this offense. Like, I do think that Brantley and Tibbs are an upgrade over their previous starting wide receivers, because I'll be honest, I can't even remember who it was aside from Jace Brown last year. Like, I want to say it was some guy that was slow, but I can't remember his name. I can see him, but I can't think of his name.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It was always the tight end or Jace Brown, pretty much all last year.
It was not the other guys. So this year, like I said, we're thinking it might be some of the other guys. So that was kind of our showdown breakdown there, about 15 minutes on Kansas State, Iowa State. So hopefully we gave you guys enough information that you can make some winning lineups here for that showdown slate. But now let's go ahead and move into the main course, right? The main slate. And what I'm going to show up here on the screen, this is Zach's sheet for the day. You can find this on his Twitter account at Big Country DFS. It's also in his Discord. It's also in the Fantasy Corner Discord, which is the one that both of us are a member of. If you want to join either of those, link is in the description. So, so we're going to kind of go through here. I did the episode game by game on Monday night or Sunday night. I can't remember what night I recorded it. So we're not going to go game by game. We are going to talk position by position. So first off, we're going to start with the quarterback position. So the first observation I have, Zach, is I think that there are two quarterbacks that stand above the rest here on this slate. Is this slate as easy as just play McIver and Alejado and make the rest work, or is there somebody else that you're really considering?
Yeah, something that I don't think a lot of people in the industry are looking at is I'm really high on Jalen Daniels this year. Finally healthy. If he's healthy and comes out like he should, he's never going to be this cheap the rest of the season. So if you want him to play him this cheap, and he's dual threat. You don't get that with McIver. You get a little bit running with Alejado, but I just feel like you pick one of those two guys at the top and then plug in Daniels, and you have, anywhere from 1,700 to 2,500 savings by using Daniels. And I think with his legs, and also, first home game, they just renovated their stadium over the summer. So I feel like it's going to be an electric crowd there in Lawrence. And Fresno State, I'm not expecting them to be anything on defense this year at all.
Anecdotally, I think if they could get him into the end zone for this home game, just for what he's meant to that program, what he's done for them the last 5 years, I think if they could get him in the end zone, they would. So I think there's a high likelihood he gets a rushing touchdown. That's something that, like you said, you're not going to get from McIver or Alejado. So I need you to talk me off a ledge here, Zach. Tell me if I'm a crazy person. The longer the week goes on, the more and more I am thinking about Ben Gulbranson. And I'm going to make the case. So basically, everybody and their brother is going to play McIver, Alejado, or Daniels, right? All the ownership's going to be there. If you drop down to Gulbranson, you're saving salary, you're getting different, and it allows you to pay up at the other positions, right? But also, I think that there's a chance Cole Branson could have a good game. Like, I just think that with this Stanford Hawaii game, the last time that they played in 2023, Stanford blew them out, and that Stanford team was not very good at all. And I just think at the end of the day, this is an ACC team taking on a Mountain West team, and we're all acting like Hawaii's the big favorite because they are the betting favorite. But this Stanford offense should still have some success. Am I crazy for thinking that Cole Branson's going to put up some fancy points?
Well, I've never been a fan of his personally, but
Agree.
I definitely see the logic, especially because if Hawaii ends up getting the lead, he's going to be passing more. You look at the last few games of last year, he threw 37, 34, 37 passes a game. And even against the second to last game of the season, he had 25 DraftKings points, which at that price, you're taking that all day long. So,
right.
Again, he's not going to get any rushing yards. Probably he's going to get the negative there from sacks and everything. But with the volume, I could see doing that because just like you said, probably every cash lineup is going to have McIver and Alejado or Daniels, and even in GPPs and single entry. Because I was all ready to play Daniels and Watson, and then Sam Houston State, goes and throws that thing at us.
Mm-hmm.
So now I don't really think I can trust the Sam Houston State U because if you aren't guaranteed to have the, playing 90% of the downs, then it's not really worth it on quarterback. And with the super flex, you don't want to take that risk. So I like dropping down there if you're not going to go with Daniels and just drop down a little bit more. Definitely not going to I'm not going to touch EJ Warner, but I can see the case for Go Branson.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on Warner. He is not in my player pool. I just don't think Fresno scores a whole lot, personally. So I'm out on Warner. And yeah, I was going to ask you what you were going to do with Watson. Like, I think as the day goes on, so what we're going to get throughout the slate tomorrow is as these games start, because they're all staggered kickoff times, right? As these games start, you're going to have like beat writers that are tweeting out like, oh, this guy's running with the ones in warm up. Oh, this guy's with the starters, and I think if we get information that Watson is starting, I think I might play him in maybe 10% of my lineups. Like, so if I'm doing a 20 max, like 2, I probably have one with him with McIver, one with him with Alejado. But I really would need that information beforehand to feel comfortable about playing him.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If you're not going to be able to, and you probably can say this with every college football slate. If you can't be around for lock, then you got to just go with the safe guys that are going to not. But like if you're sitting around, on Saturday grilling whatever, and you see a tweet about 2 minutes before the game, we got word that Watson's going to be the starter and it's in his game. Then yeah, fire it up.
Mm-hmm. And somebody last year they asked me, well, how do you find that information, right? I'm like, well, the simplest thing is you just type the player's name into Twitter. And if something pops up within the last 30 minutes or so, then I would take it for what it's worth, right? To me, that's the only thing you can really do aside from buying a ticket and going to every game and watching the pregame warmups, which is not feasible.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the quarterbacks. We're going to kind of come back and hit on quarterbacks a little bit more when we talk about stacking with the wide receivers. So like I see some people in the chat talking about some stacks. Yeah, we're going to talk about stacks when we get to the wide receivers. But let's go ahead now and talk about running backs. So I see Sachi in the chat says, I feel that way about Ford. Yes, that's actually where I want to start things. So my analysis of the running back position has actually changed as the week has gone on. At the start of the week, I was all in on Bryson Donaldson because Fresno is going to run the football. He is going to be the guy that's going to be running it. And it makes sense that, you have a for sure RB1, a for sure high volume offense. Why not play the running back? But I really don't think this Fresno team is going to have a lot of success the more and more the week goes on. And you're paying a pretty penny to get to Donaldson. So I'm kind of like, he's still going to make my player pool for sure, but he's not going to be a big part of it like I thought he was at the start of the week. What are your thoughts on Donaldson, Zach?
Yeah, that's almost exact carbon copy of what I was thinking at the beginning of the week. I was like, oh yeah, a good solid player here, but he's literally the most expensive other than Wright from Western Kentucky at the running back position. And you're going to have Highshaw and Williams for Kansas, and they're going to run similar to Kansas State. Both of them are going to get plenty of run, and they're real cheap. And then, as you mentioned with Ford, he's cheap too. And so I just don't see a reason really to pay up for that because, as we're going to mention here in a few minutes, with the receivers about that same price, you're going to want those receivers instead.
Yeah, I think that's another piece of it that you hit on there as well is I would rather pay up for these sure things at wide receiver than pay up at running back this week. Like just bottom line, like the wide receivers, they're at the top of the board. I think there's a huge gulf between them and the wide receivers are at the bottom. Whereas for running back, like you mentioned, we have Highshaw Williams right there. Nice, easy, comfortable clicks at 5,300 and 4,500. And I think it's normally not that common, but I think it will be quite common here on this slate for people to pair both of them together simply because we know that that's an offense that is going to have a lot of rushing volume, and we know that's an offense that's going to have a lot of rushing success. And if you play both of them and you don't play Daniels and they happen to account for 4 total touchdowns, you're going to get big-time value out of the two of them.
Yeah, that's probably what I would recommend if you're one to use Alejado and McIver is probably use both of those guys because like you mentioned, there's only a few, probably 3 or 4 receivers that are for sure that we know we can fire up with safety and confidence.
So now for the other teams, right? Like we mentioned the Fresno, Kansas game, which is probably the 2 most run-happy teams on the slate. So I'm going to kind of quickly go through some other teams, and you tell me if you're in or out. Hawaii, Sims and Barfield, in or out?
Yeah, probably going to be out for me just because, like Sims, he's similar in price to Sinacle. So, I mean, I would just rather take Sinacle right there.
I agree. I just you look at the prices for running backs. I'd rather play Highshaw. I'd rather play Williams. I'd rather play Ford, and they're all either the same price or cheaper. All right, now the WKU guys. I'm talking Wright, Hart, McGill, in or out?
With that, I might take a shot in a couple lineups if I'm doing 10, 20 lineups because since they pass so much, they do use the running back. But the problem is, which one's going to be the main guy, and they're probably all going to rotate. And with the prices, it's just, again, Highshaw and Williams and Ford are all cheaper.
Bingo. I think if I were to do the pricing on this slate and I had Wright and Hart at 4,900 and 4,700, then it would be a decision to make. But with them as like 2 of the highest priced running backs on the slate, I can't get there. I don't mind what Huncho's saying in the chat with McGill. They're going to play all 3 guys, right? And so why not go for the cheapest one and hope and pray that he scores a touchdown, right? I don't mind that logic at all because I don't think he's going to be very popular either. So you get a big time ownership discount. All right, now the odd one, Sam Houston. So basically, Sam Houston brought in 3 running back transfers that were all highly touted: Elijah Green, Shane Porter, and hold on, I can't find the other one.
I got the depth charts here. Let me see.
It was Green, Porter, and McCaskill.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 of them. Yeah. And they all came in highly touted transfers, and none of them are listed on the opening depth chart. The 2 that are there are Landon Coco Brown at 3,200, and I believe there's the other one named Porter. No, not Porter.
Jerry and Parker.
Parker, yes. Jerry and Parker, who we don't even have here on the sheet because we're not playing them. So, Zach, what do you make of that big, colossal mess that they gave us with that depth chart?
I've still been thinking about it all week, and I'm like, I don't know if the coach is just trying to do some kind of gamesmanship. I mean, I don't see how you don't have Green, Porter, or McCaskill as one of the starting running backs.
Correct. I'm in full agreement with you on that.
I don't know if they just didn't want to list the transfers or what. So just Green, I'm probably not going to use just because of the price.
Mm-hmm.
But see taking a shot maybe with McCaskill or Porter just because they're cheaper.
Yes, I think I'm with you on that. So I might try one lineup with Green only because I remember him when he was at North Carolina, and I thought, like, hey, this guy's not bad. Like, they have a plan in place for if Amari Hampton ever gets injured or transfers. And I thought he was a pretty solid player, that was with the Phil Longo system. He should know the Phil Longo system. And I think he's the most talented one there. But with him not being on that depth chart and him being priced up, it's just really hard to click him in a lineup.
Yeah. If I had to pick, like Darren said in the chat,
Mm-hmm.
I remember him from North Texas, and he can be explosive. And at that price, it's similar to the McGill play. They're all probably going to see action. And I mean, like against UTSA last year, he had 13 carries, but 193 yards, 42 points. So that could be one of those slate breaker plays if we get word or you see something. Porter's running with the ones in the pregame warmups.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, too, that was like a Friday night game where there was like a 3-game slate, and you just won all the money if you had Shane Porter that night. Like, that's just kind of the type of guy he is. So yeah, I get getting to him. So I will say, like I was telling you guys earlier, I listened to all the Sam Houston content I could find, and literally Landon Coco Brown, the guy that's the starter, what the guys, and he was like not a beat reporter, but he was like an insider. He was like the leader of the NIL collective for Sam Houston State. He literally said about Landon Brown, yeah, he's been with the program. Everybody likes him. He's not going to figure to be a part of the rotation, though. It was literally his exact words. And then now he's the starter on the depth chart.
He's on the depth chart.
So I don't know what to make of that at all. I would incline to think that the guy was more on the right track of he's not going to be a big part. And who knows, maybe he goes out there, lifetime achievement award for being with the program. He gets one carry, and then it gets to being Green and Porter and McCaskill and those guys. I will say he did say on the podcast that Elijah Green was the most impressive of them, was his words. And then with Porter, I want to say Porter transferred in after the spring, and he said something to the effect of, yeah, they must have still felt they needed something at running back because they went out and got Shane Porter. Something to that effect. So maybe we're onto something with Porter, maybe not. But like I said, I think that this situation is really only one to try if you have a ton of lineups to play and you have a ton of risk tolerance to play them.
Yeah. That's kind of if for those that aren't familiar with the sheet, we kind of list the cash safe, and that's the guys that we're confident in the floor but also have upside. GPP, and then GPP, you're not going to use them in cash, but they're good for GPP. And then risky is kind of like, well, if you could get a floor of like 10, or you could get 40, 50. And then the mega risk is obviously the guys that are probably not even on our player pool, or just could be 0 or could be 10. So
yeah, chance at a goose egg is how I would describe it.
Yeah, basically.
All right, so last guy we're going to talk about. I saved this guy for last intentionally because I think this guy is going to be a core play for me. Micah Ford of Stanford. I think as more time goes on, I'm warming more and more up to this Stanford offense, and Stanford having success against Hawaii. And then their head coach is Frank Reich. Now, granted, this was in the NFL, but Frank Reich was a guy that pretty much played one back when he was in the NFL. And I think that Ford is the best one. He ran for 100 yards against Clemson last year. And so if Ford is getting all the carries and the offense is having success, then I think it makes a lot of sense to play Micah Ford here on this slate.
Yeah, I agree with that. And part of that, too, is other than Highshaw or Williams, I'm probably going to have one of those two guys in every lineup. There's just not a lot that stands out at running back. So you have to play two. You can't just play one. So Ford, I agree. I think Stanford could end up beating Hawaii, even though Hawaii is favored. And he's had some success. I mean, Clemson was not a bad rush defense last year. He had 122 yards. He didn't get in the end zone. He had 16 points. So,
and well, I think too, let me rephrase that. I don't have the ability to do this, even though I consider myself a pretty good with math person. I would need some help with this. I feel like Stanford's players are priced disproportionately cheap for their implied point total on the slate. Like the WKU players and the Hawaii players are priced up because they're expected to score 35 points, right? But yet Stanford is like not that far behind. They're only 2-point dogs to Hawaii, and all their guys are cheap. And I think Michael Ford's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's like they priced Hawaii and Western Kentucky expecting them to win and score a lot of points, but forget that the total is still high on both games.
Correct. Okay, so now we're going to go to wide receivers and tight ends. And so basically this is like the stacking portion, right? So let's play a little game called Pick One. All right. So we're going to talk about the teams and we're going to say pick one wide receiver. All right. So first off, Fresno State, their 3 listed starters are Freeman, Brown, and Abbott with the tight end Richie Anderson. If you had to pick one, who would you pick?
It'd probably be Freeman, but I'm probably not going to play any Fresno, honestly.
I'm with you. Freeman is probably the only one that's going to make my player pool, mainly because Freeman played sparingly for them last year, but like they had a really good receiver room last year with Delana and Jalen Moss, and I want to say there was a Sharp, something Sharp. I don't remember his first name, and I'm not going to hold it against them for not getting a whole lot of playing time in that room, right? And if they're down early, which I expect them to be, and they're throwing a lot, I think Freeman's the guy that's going to command that volume. So I think Freeman's going to make my player pool, probably no one else, though. And I think we're pretty much aligned on that.
Yeah.
All right, now let's go to Kansas. So Kansas is a little tougher. Their list is starters. We got Cam Pickett. We got Doug Emilien. We got Emmanuel Henderson Jr. We got Levi Wentz. If you could pick one, who you picking?
Yeah, Kansas is just tough for me because they've had several guys, tight ends. They've had Grimm, Arnold, all those guys, but they never really put up big fantasy points, even when Daniels was scoring 50 points 2 years ago, because just so much of the offense was between Daniels and Neal. And so I would probably lean to Pickett if I had to pick one, but again, it's just one of those things. I'd rather just play the quarterback and just get all the passes.
I am fairly aligned with you on that. I think if I were to pick one, I would probably pick Henderson, but I'm playing Daniels unstacked. Like if Daniels gets to his upside, which is 30 plus fantasy points, it's going to be because of his legs and not because of his arm. And so why would I gamble on picking the right Kansas wide receiver when I don't have to pick a Kansas wide receiver? Yeah. That's just how I view that one. All right, game number 2. So this is it's gonna be the tricky one. All right, let's go ahead and get the tricky one out of the way. Sam Houston State and Darren in the chat. Yeah, I'm pretty much on board with that as well. Sports editor says don't believe anything on the Bearcats depth chart, but the or on the quarterback chart. Yeah, I think the whole thing's a mess. So with the Sam Houston wide receivers, the listed starters were Adkism, Phoenix, and Phillips. However, one of their second leading receiver last year was Quavez Humphreys. They also have a transfer from Arizona State in Caleb Black that was not listed on the depth chart. That was the guy I was hoping to see as like wide receiver 1. I was all ready to hammer Caleb Black at 3,100 if he was listed as a starter, but he's not on the depth chart, so I'm probably not playing him. So if you could pick one of these Sam Houston guys, Zach, who are you going with?
Yeah, that's a tough one since we don't have a clue.
I think that's the toughest one of all of them, honestly.
I think the one getting the most buzz is Phoenix. Humphreys, as you mentioned, was their returner, but again, the price is just whenever you can just get a little bit more, $500 more, and get one of the Hawaii guys. So maybe Adkism, I don't know. But like you mentioned, if we could see something with Black in one, then it's basically almost min price, so there's hardly any risk in that. So
that's the guy I want. But like you said, I want confirmation before I play him. I don't want a goose egg. So listening to all the Sam Houston content I could find, they were talking about Humphreys. And literally they said, yeah, he's super talented, but he does stuff to irritate the coaching staff and ends up in the doghouse. That's why he didn't play all the snaps. And I'm like, I'm thinking back to what I saw from him last year, and I'm like, that kind of tracks, because I remember watching those Tuesday night games with Sam Houston, and he would catch like a bomb, and then it'd be like, wait a minute, where is he the rest of the game, right? And I feel like that kind of tracks, and I feel like them putting him number 2 on the depth chart, it's probably sending him a message that he needs to start doing what they want him to do. So I'm probably out entirely on Humphreys. The 2 guys that they really liked on the Sam Houston podcast were Phoenix and Phillips. Phoenix ended the season strong last year. He had a few of what I call random touchdown games where he didn't play a whole lot of snaps, but he came in, scored a touchdown, and probably helped win you some money on some of those Tuesday, Wednesday night slates. And everybody apparently really likes him. That's he was the guy that the coaching staff was hyping up the most, was Phoenix. And then Phillips, I want to shout out because he's a guy that's been around in the program, and he is listed as the starting slot. Now, the reason why that matters, Phil Longo's offense historically targets the slot very, very heavily. And so if he is able to hold on to that slot role, that could be super, super lucrative. And he's another guy like Phoenix. They weren't as eager to hype him up, but they were definitely saying positive things about him. So, yeah, I guess I never gave my official answer. So if I had to pick one for this team, I am probably going to go with Michael Phoenix. But I think the only 2 that are going to make my player pool are Phoenix or Phillips. But I will be all ready to fire on Caleb Black if I see a tweet that he's running with the ones in warmups.
Yeah, that's pretty much straightforward. Fresno, Kansas, and Sam Houston is kind of like 1, maybe 2 guys, and forget the rest.
Yeah, now we get to kind of the more fun teams to talk about for wide receiver, at least in my opinion. Western Kentucky, numerical depth chart, Western Kentucky. We have no idea who's going to start for this one. We can only go by what we know, just kind of as ball knowers, right? So we've got Matthew Henry, the WIU transfer, KD Hutchinson, the package player from last year, Jarris Mack, the Charlotte transfer, Noah Myers, who I believe transferred from somewhere. I want to say Old Dominion. One of them's an Old Dominion transfer. Don't quote me on that, though. Musa Berry, who was a package player last year, and Cameron Flowers, who played super, super sparingly last year. So I know my answer to this, but Zach, if you had to pick one for Western Kentucky, who are you picking?
Mine, actually, he's in my core, is KD Hutchinson.
I'm with you on that.
Just because I'm familiar with him from watching Western Kentucky last year, and he's one of those guys that can explosive play, 75-yard touchdown, one play. And he also gets some running games on some sweeps sometimes, so you can get the rushing bonuses as well.
Yeah, I think this is one where, as somebody who watched Western Kentucky last year in some of those Tuesday night, Wednesday night Conference USA games, which, by the way, shout out to Conference USA for making that a thing, because it gives me football every night of the week. He really popped in some of those games. Just when the ball is in his hands, he makes things happen. And I really like his chances of, like you said, taking a jet sweep or a screen or something and breaking a tackle against this bad Sam Houston defense and going 60 yards and getting you a touchdown off of it. I think he is the best one to target in this system. Now, I will say Western Kentucky is the most likely team for me to double stack. Are you in agreement on that, Zach?
It's probably pretty close between them and Hawaii, just because the 2 guys we're going to mention here in a minute. But, yeah. The only reason that I have a slight edge to Hawaii is just because I don't know a lot about, the rest of Western Kentucky. I know Flowers, though. Huncho had mentioned to me he scored a couple touchdowns in the spring game, and so he could be a sneaky guy to look at too.
Yeah, he was their guy that went off in the spring game. I saw people taking him in some season-long full FBS best balls because of how he did in the spring game. But yeah, I'm definitely, I think Henry's going to end up being the most popular one. So I'm probably not going to have a whole lot of Hutchinson and Henry, but I do think that I have some interest in Jarris Mack. So I mentioned Jarris Mack as a Charlotte transfer. There's actually another Charlotte transfer there. Isaiah Myers is his name. And I'm like, I wonder if there's something to that, right? And so I looked it up, and their new wide receivers coach at Western Kentucky is the former Charlotte wide receivers coach. So if he didn't like Jarris Mack, he wouldn't have brought him with him.
Yeah.
So that's enough for me to make Jarris Mack a part of my player pool, personally. So to kind of wrap things up on WKU, Hutchinson, probably a core play for me. Definitely a core play, you said, for Zach. Henry's probably going to make my player pool, but not as much. Mack and Flowers also going to make my player pool. All right, so now let's talk about the last game. First off, we got Stanford. 3 listed starters are Williams, High, and Farrell. But in my opinion, the guy I'm going to target in this passing game isn't listed as a started receiver. You know who I'm talking about?
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm talking about Sam Roush, the tight end for Stanford. Stanford, one of those schools that's basically tight end you. I really like this guy. I think he's going to play on Sundays. He has the potential to absolutely command targets in this offense, and he's just going to be a mismatch against this Hawaii defense here in week 1. And if they're going to have success throwing the ball, it's going to be with Roush. And to me, he is my favorite stacking partner with my Gold-Branson lineups, which I'm going to have. And I'm even willing to play him as a one-off because, like I said, I think this Stanford team is not getting shut out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, and Ford and Roush, they're cheap. Let you get the Ashlock and the Sanakel and Hutchinson plays. So I don't even think we need to mess around with the rest of the Stanford guys just because they're going to throw to the tight end a lot.
And, you do have the min-price starter in Farrell. CJ Williams is the guy that they're saying is the wide receiver 1, but I don't know. I'd rather just stick with Roush. That's just me.
Yeah, and the crazy thing was last year he only scored 2 touchdowns the entire season, but he still averaged 7 DraftKings points a game. And for that price, he's eventually going to find the end zone. And so I think it's worth a shot.
And that was also in an offense that had Alec Ayamaner and Emmett Mosley in it. And those guys ain't walking through that door.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So now, saving probably the best for last, we got to talk about Hawaii. So Hawaii, they're running that run and shoot with Timmy Chang as their head coach. So they listed 4 starting wide receivers, which tracks. Like, they're going to play a lot of 10 personnel. They're going to play a lot of 4 wide receivers on the field. The 4 listed starting receivers, I'll go in order of salary: Pafeli Ashlock, Nick Snackle, Jackson Harris, Brandon White. This is probably the toughest one for this game, Zach. If you had to pick one, who you picking?
So initially, I was thinking right off the bat, Sanakel, because of the price difference. But now, from what I've been seeing, it looks like everyone's going to him for saving $1,000. So that makes me want to go to Ashlock. He had 100. I think it was 104 targets last year, and so between the two of them, almost 200 targets. So that they're ball a lot. So you can't go wrong with either one of them. But, I mean, just like the last game of the season, he had 8 for 79 yards and a touchdown. So he's got and at the beginning of the season against Sam Houston and against San Diego State, Northern Iowa, those 3 games, in those 3 games alone, he had 26 catches. And so just insane amount of volume.
So to add on to that with Ashlock, I went back and looked because that every time you have a G5 team playing a Power 4 team, sometimes you don't know how they're going to react, right? So in every year he's been a starter, they've played a Power 4 opponent, right? And in those 4 games, Pafeli Ashlock is averaging 27 DraftKings points a game. So when he gets to play against big time competition, he does not shy away from it. Like, he is used to playing guys that are quote unquote better than him, and he shows out. And to add on to what you said, the 879 and 1 that he had the last game of the regular season last year, that was with Alejado at quarterback. So Alejado definitely has a little bit of that connection with Ashlock. So I'm in full agreement with you. As it seems like more and more ownership is going to be going on Sanakel, I am going on more and more Ashlock, and I'm finding ways to save that $1,000 elsewhere. This is also the one where this is the only team I'll say this about. All 4 of those starting wide receivers are going to make my player pool. I'm playing enough Alejado to build different kinds of stacks. And I could just see scenarios where all four of those guys hit, right? Like they're going to be on the field a ton. They're going to throw the ball a ton. And you got Jackson Harris in a revenge game, the former Stanford transfer. Always love me a revenge game narrative. And then Brandon White, the Kentucky transfer. That guy's legitimately talented. He's a speed burner. Like he runs under a 4.4. All it would take is one deep catch for him to hit value at that price tag. So I'm going to be playing all four of those guys.
Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. And I think you have to have at least one, if not two, in your lineups, just because they're going to be throwing. They threw 59 times that game. Alejandro 57 times, and he was also the leading rusher for 10 carries for 54 yards, and then 1, 2, 3. Because I just pulled up the box score. They had 5 guys that had 4+ catches, and 1, 2, 3, 4 different guys scored touchdowns. So there's going to be a lot of passing game work to go around.
Yeah, and especially if it's those 4 guys that are on the field the whole game and you know it's going to be those 4 guys, like that gives you like a level of security that all these teams can't really give you too. So one last thing, and then we're probably going to get out of here. So Darren says in the chat, asking your opinion about DK new snake draft, which I heart with no salary in mind. How would you pick this slate? So honestly, I have done 3 of these drafts and I love them. I absolutely love it. It's a cool format. You have to wait a long time for it to fill. So like, I would not recommend like signing up as the first person and then like leaving your phone or computer for an hour and then you have an auto drafted team. I would not recommend that. So be patient if you join one. But yeah, the biggest way I would handicap it is the top 2 quarterbacks are going to go 1-2. McIver and Alejado. Daniels probably goes 3. But after that, the draft format does have a super flex. So I highly recommend getting the 2 quarterbacks. No matter who it ends up being, getting 2 quarterbacks is going to be a big part of success in that format because the other guys that you're going to be drafting that can go in the super flex aren't going to give you that many fantasy points. Like just on a mathematical basis, you just need to make sure you're getting 2 quarterbacks, even if it's EJ Warner, who we crapped on earlier. You need to make sure you're getting to 2 of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, I would give an opinion, but I haven't really looked at it to know. And I try to pull it up. I guess you can't do it on the computer. You can only do it on your phone.
That's weird. Or it might be a state thing too.
Oh yeah,
because you're in Oklahoma, right?
Texas.
Yeah, I knew it was. Yeah, I should have known better. Glad you're in Texas, not Oklahoma.
But yeah, I would agree with that. Since there's no salary, definitely get both quarterbacks.
And another thing I've done in that, Darren, is when I take a quarterback, I am either trying to build my stack or block someone else's stack, right? So like if I have the 3rd pick and I get Daniels, and then it comes back to me for the 4th pick, right? And I know that the 2 guys have Alejado and McIver, I'm going to take Ashlock right there because I think he's the best wide receiver on the slate. And then the guy who has Alejado doesn't get to stack with Ashlock. So like just strategies like that, it really does kind of add some mind games to it. And I've enjoyed it. And I hope that they continue to do it. And I hope that they do it with bigger slates because I think that'll add an extra layer of strategy to it if they do it with big slates, because then you're not scrambling to try to get that second quarterback or, there are only limited options at quarterback. Like if they do that for next Saturday and it's a 12 gamer, there's 24 starting quarterbacks in that slate. All right. So that does it for our draft time. So Zach, wrapping up here, why don't you kind of quickly recap the people you're fave for over here on the sheet?
Okay, so with Highshaw, that's just okay. Before I get into it, so to explain for some that are new, with the sheets that I do for college football and college basketball, I'll do them as well. They're mostly for cash or single entry. So there's usually what I do is I have 3 guys that are high ownership that I like, and then 1 guy that's lower ownership, and that is my guy. And so Highshaw, he's taking over for Devin Neal, and they run the football like crazy. And that price is just way too cheap. It's probably going to be the highest owned player on the slate, and for good reason. So if you're not doing cash or you're doing a mass entry GPP, you could definitely use Williams as a pivot off of him because he's going to get some action too. And then Hutchinson, like we already mentioned, should be the number one receiver in the slot, and also getting the jet sweeps and things like that. And he pairs nicely with McIver. McIver, the reason I picked him is a little bit for the savings because, and similar to what you mentioned about Hawaii, he's a redshirt freshman. He got to play the last game and he did well, but it was against New Mexico, who's one of the worst teams in college football. So there's still somewhat of a risk, in my opinion, because like you mentioned, Stanford could just come out and beat the doors off of them. And so I picked McIver. He's been in 7 years in college football. He's thrown for over 8,000 yards, I believe.
And to add on to that, he was a former 4-star recruit and played at Texas Tech. So don't think that he's just some little FCS, like, no-name Cinderella story. Like, nah, this guy has pedigree.
Yeah, and speaking of Texas Tech, whenever he played against them last year, they almost beat them. He had 500 yards, I think, and 5 TDs. So he went off. And so he's just a nice pairing option with Hutchinson. And then the last one's kind of self-explanatory, just picking whatever fits your lineup best with Sanacle or Ashlock. If your lineup is already looking chalky, then I would probably go to Ashlock if you can afford it to get a little bit less ownership. They're both going to be high owned. But Sanacle's probably going to be the highest owned receiver just because of his price. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at. And with cash games, most people are probably going to try to get Alejado with McIver, but I also like, as I already mentioned, going with Daniels too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. McIver's my number one quarterback. I didn't realize before we started that we were going to be such aligned on McIver personally, because I just very rarely see a scenario where he fails. The scenario might be, he doesn't get the touchdowns. Maybe he gets vultured by the running backs, whatever. I still think it's highly likely he gets to 300 yards. No matter how many times he scores a touchdown.
Yeah, and something to think about too, as we're talking about the matchups and Hawaii with the ACC. Well, you got Western Kentucky. He's playing with his offensive coordinator. He came over from Christian Witham, and Sam Houston wasn't that good last year, and they lost some guys on defense. And I mean, they're only a couple years removed from being an FCS team themselves. So,
I believe they lost their top 12 tacklers on defense. Sam Houston did. Like I said, all in on the Sam Houston content this week. So, I just don't think they're going to be very good defensively, and that kind of just leads me more and more to Maverick McIver. All right, so that is going to do it for our first college football week 0 live show. So hope to have many more of these throughout the season. I cannot always guarantee that it is going to be on Friday nights because, Zach, I know you've got some high school football obligations. So maybe we could make it a Thursday night thing, a live before lock thing on Saturday. We'll see, but we definitely want to do more of these before the season goes. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that way you can be notified when we do in fact go live. And while you're at it, make sure you hit that like button on this video so that way more people can find it, more people can enjoy the content, we can grow the community, right? So now before we go, Zach, please tell the people where they can find more information from you if they would like it.
Yeah, so Twitter, as you mentioned, it's just at Big Country DFS. And then on the Twitter, the pinned post, you can find the Discord. But I'm also in the Discord with you, the Fantasy Corner Discord, and so I'll be chatting in both of those, I'm sure. And the one thing that I want to mention, and I appreciate you having me on, is I'm all about just the small guy players that they're not throwing out $10,000 a night. They're trying to hit it big with a couple $10 lineups or whatever. And so I have always just strived on, being free and having all my stuff's free. So all the sheets that I do are free. and all of that. And so anytime you have any questions, just hit me up. And again, I just appreciate you having me on here, and just it's kind of crazy, like you mentioned. Didn't realize how aligned we were going to be on almost every single thought. We hadn't even talked. Literally, I promise you, we hadn't talked about it at all. Talk about hardly before we jumped on here. So
yeah, so like honestly, I thought we were gonna have some like more back and forth, because like just thinking about some of the interactions we've had in the Discord when it comes to college basketball, there was times where we were like on totally opposite sides of players, right? And you kind of keep, not necessarily either one of us is doing this, but there's days where you had it right, days where I had it right, days where we were both right, both wrong. It happens. So yeah, definitely glad to have you on here tonight. Like I was telling you guys at the start, I wouldn't bring somebody on here if they don't know ball, if they don't add to the show, and if you guys sitting there watching aren't going to like them being on here, right? So definitely glad to have you on, Zach. I hope everybody that was watching enjoyed it. If you're watching this on replay in preparation from the slate, hopefully we gave you guys all the information you need to build some winning lineups here on this slate. So last thing before we go, obviously week 1 is like the big kickoff that kind of like everybody in America recognizes, right? But week 0, this is kind of like the kickoff for the sickos, right? The kickoff for the people that love this stuff like we do. So Zach, are you doing anything special tomorrow for week 0, or are you just chilling?
No, I'm probably just going to be chilling, sleep in. We started school back, and I'm a teacher like you are, and they moved me to the junior high this year. And, the first day I didn't sit down until about 12:30 for lunch. So I'm going to be sleeping in, then watching some football and just kind of relaxing, just enjoying it. And one final thing I want to mention too is with, early in the season, we don't have a lot of draft depth chart information or, stuff like Sam Houston or Western Kentucky. What I always like to do with the flex spot is just kind of take a shot on those guys that, it could be the 0, or it could be, you're winning money because of it. Because there's going to be so many plays tomorrow that everybody's going to have, and you're just going to be locked in on those same guys. You got to get different somewhere, and that's one of the places to do that.
100%. And to kind of add on to that, this is also a week with all the uncertainty. Like, it could be really good for all the uncertainty. It could also be really bad for all the uncertainty. So, make sure that you know your own risk tolerance. Don't bet what you can't afford to lose. And you can only make decisions that feel good in the moment and you look back at and can feel comfortable with, right? And if you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, you're wrong, and be able to live with it. That's kind of one of the hardest things to learn as somebody who plays DFS or bets on sports, but it's absolutely a necessary lesson to learn.
Yep.
All right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and roll on out of here, y'all. So thank you guys for tuning in, watching live with us here tonight. And thank you guys watching the replay for watching this and helping us, or letting us help you prepare for your DFS slate. But with that, we are going to roll on out of here. So best of luck to everybody with their week 0 lineups. Zach, thank you for coming on, and I will see you next time.